Hey, Dr. John here for extraktLAB. How are you doing? I'm going to be talking about the environmental sustainability of CO2 extraction, and I'm going to be comparing that versus ethanol, give you some figures of merit related to energy, related to hazardous waste, emissions deficit, smog producing VOC. So let's get into this. If you're interested in learning more about how to do these calculations yourself, you can go to our website. You can read our blog articles. On our website, we have a calculator there, and you can put in the exact parameters for your particular operation. It'll tell you what the relative energy use and how much hazardous waste and VOC production capability of your particular facility is. All right, so let's get into this. If you compare CO2 extraction, extracting 1 ton, and ethanol, extracting 1 ton, CO2 will use approximately 16 times less energy. That's 1,600% less energy compared to ethanol. This has a lot to do with the energetics of heating a condensed solvent like ethanol. You have to heat it up, you have to evaporate it, bring it back down to minus 20 or minus 40, and then you have to keep on cycling and doing that again and again. It's an extremely energy intensive process. CO2 is not like that at all. So that's why it's much less energy intense. CO2 extraction generates 32 times less hazardous waste. This is due to the fact that it's not using volumes and volumes and volumes of ethanol, and you're creating hazardous waste when you use all that ethanol because you can't keep on using it forever. At some point in time, there's so much contaminants in it that you're not able to use it, or if you're doing from batch to batch, you get contamination in there, so you're using a lot less. And it's not just 32%. No, it's 32 times, that 3,200% less hazardous waste. So CO2 extraction also has 29 times less greenhouse gas emissions deficit. And really what that's talking about is when you're using CO2, it takes a lot less BTUs to create 1 liter of CO2 compared to ethanol, which is highly intensive. It carries a tremendous amount of emissions deficit just to create that solvent. So for every gallon or every liter of ethanol you're using, it's creating a huge GHG or greenhouse gas deficit for your operation. The fourth thing is a CO2 extraction produces approximately 15 times, that's 1,500% less smog in terms of VOC production. The VOC really comes from outgassing from biomass that has been extracted. You're not able to get all of the ethanol, for example, out of your biomass. Usually there's 5 to 15% left in there, and that all goes up into the atmosphere. And guess what? It's going to create smog. Okay, so if you don't like smog-filled cities, if you don't like smog-filled parks, you like to take green walks out in the sand and in the beach and in the forest and things like that, think a little bit more about how you are operating and if you're operating with an environmentally sustainable footprint. The last thing, or the second to last thing, is 100% emissions can be recaptured as biomass for CO2. If you are connected to a grow, which a lot of operators are, you can pipe the effluent or the waste from CO2 back into the grow, and the plants will eat it and spit out oxygen. That's a great feature of plants, okay? And so you can really do that with 100% of those emissions. And if you have an operation, that's really what we would recommend. The last thing is that you can compost 100% of that solid waste coming out. You don't have to worry about removing ethanol or have to removing a solvent before you put it out into a compost. You don't really want to compost, biomass that has a lot of solid waste associated with it or a lot of solvents still in it, because it's not going to compost well, and you're also going to, it would be flammable, and also it's not really a very sustainable thing to do. Some of that can leach into the groundwater and so on and so forth. So these are the main reasons why we believe CO2 is much more sustainable than ethanol. I hope that helps you guys make some decisions and be friendly to the planet. So thanks and take care. Bye now.